Flight attendant blocks. Black doctor from saving dying man. FBI steps in. The plane was quiet as it soared through the night sky, its passengers lulled into a false sense of calm. Outside, the stars glistened faintly against the inky blackness of the sky, the occasional cloud passing lazily by. Inside, passengers were either nodding off or gazing out the windows. Dr. Maya Williams, an accomplished surgeon on her way home from a medical conference in Boston, had finally found a moment of respite. She leaned back in her seat, pulling out her tablet to review some notes for a new procedure she would be leading in the coming weeks. But just as she began to lose herself in her thoughts, the peace shattered. A sharp, guttural scream pierced the air, followed by a series of frantic voices. Maya's instincts kicked in immediately. She stood, pushing her tablet into the seat pocket, her mind already racing through the possibilities. She had no idea what was happening, but when you were a surgeon, you always prepared for the worst. Pushing past confused passengers, Maya navigated to the front of the plane, where she saw a middle-aged man lying in the aisle. His face was pale, his hands clenched in what looked like an involuntary spasm. His breathing was shallow and erratic. The flight attendants hovered nervously, unsure of how to handle the situation. Maya's heart rate spiked. She could see the fear in the flight attendants' eyes. They were out of their depth. Without hesitation, she rushed forward. "I'm a doctor," she said, kneeling next to the man. "I need a defibrillator. Now." But before she could make contact, a flight attendant grabbed her arm and pulled her back. "Ma'am, we've got this under control. Please take your seat," the attendant said, her voice firm, but there was a tremor of uncertainty behind it. Maya froze for a second. "Excuse me?" she asked, her voice a mix of disbelief and fury. "I'm a doctor. This man is having a heart attack. I need to help." The attendant's grip tightened. "I said we have it under control. Please go back to your seat." Maya could feel her blood pressure rising. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't just a minor inconvenience. This was a life-or-death situation, and a flight attendant, someone without medical training, was standing in her way. Maya's heart pounded in her chest, but she knew the moment she took a step back, this man's chances of survival would grow slimmer. The clock was ticking. The other passengers in the cabin were now watching, some whispering, others glancing at each other nervously. It was as though the tension in the air had solidified into something thick and unmovable. Maya felt a burning wave of frustration. She wasn't asking for permission. She was a trained medical professional. She had saved lives in hospitals, in emergency rooms, in disaster zones. This man's life depended on her, and she wasn't going to be stopped by ignorance and bureaucracy. "Call the captain," she said, her voice steely. "Get me a defibrillator." "I'm not asking. I'm telling you." The attendant, clearly rattled, didn't move. The seconds dragged on. The man's breathing grew more labored, and Maya could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. And then, in the midst of the chaos, the intercom crackled. "Attention, passengers. This is your captain speaking." The voice came through, loud and clear. "We are diverting the flight. Please stay calm and return to your seats." Maya's breath hitched. The situation had escalated beyond a simple medical emergency. It was now a matter of protocol, safety, and authority, and Maya felt her frustration mount. Why was this happening? Why was she being blocked from saving a life? Dr. Maya Williams didn't come from a family of privilege. She had built her success from the ground up. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood, she knew the value of hard work. Her mother had worked 2 jobs to support Maya and her younger brother, pushing them to excel despite the odds. Maya's father was absent from their lives, leaving her mother to carry the weight of everything. Maya learned early on that she had to fight for everything. She was one of the few black girls at her school, a high achiever among a sea of white, affluent peers. But it didn't matter how smart she was or how hard she worked. She was often treated differently because of the color of her skin. Whether it was being passed over for leadership positions or having her ideas dismissed in group projects, Maya learned that her value was constantly being questioned, but Maya had always been determined. She excelled in high school, earning a full scholarship to one of the country's top universities. There, she was one of the few women of color in the pre-med program, facing constant discrimination from professors and fellow students alike. But she didn't let it deter her. She fought for every opportunity, every placement, and every moment of recognition. By the time she completed her medical degree, Maya had already decided she would not only become a surgeon, but a leader in her field. Her years in medical school were filled with late nights, long shifts, and an unrelenting focus on her goal. Yet even in the hospital, even among colleagues who should have been allies, Maya found herself constantly fighting to prove her worth. As a black woman, she had to work twice as hard to get half the recognition. Maya's mother, however, had always taught her to fight back. "You've got a fire in you," she would say. "Don't let anyone dim your light, not for 1 second. You're here for a reason, and they'll see it eventually." And Maya did. She earned respect through her competence, her precision, and her ability to remain calm in the most chaotic situations. But Maya never forgot the battles that had come before. In every hospital meeting, every procedure, every interaction, she was always reminded of the reality of being a black woman in a world that wasn't built for her. On this flight, as she sat watching the flight attendant block her from saving a life, Maya couldn't help but wonder if she had been treated this way because of her race. If she had been a white man, would the flight attendant have hesitated? Would she have gotten in her way at all? She thought of the many times in her career when her authority had been questioned, her medical decisions scrutinized in ways that never happened to her white colleagues. Was this just another one of those moments? Was she still being judged on her skin color instead of her qualifications? Karen, the flight attendant, represented a certain type of power that Maya had seen so many times in her life, the kind that was wielded with ignorance, bias, and entitlement. Karen had no idea who Maya was. She had no idea that Maya had spent years working to be where she was, earning her credentials, saving lives, and fighting to be recognized in a system that had constantly tried to push her down. And yet, here Karen was, standing in her way. As the flight continued its descent, Maya's frustration grew. She had asked for a defibrillator. She had insisted she could help, but Karen continued to block her. The passengers were starting to murmur, their whispers growing louder. Some began to rise from their seats, unsure of what was happening, but clearly uncomfortable with the growing tension. "I'm a doctor," Maya repeated, her voice no longer as calm as before. "Please, let me help him. The longer you wait, the less likely he is to make it." Karen remained unmoved, her eyes flicking nervously toward the flight attendants who had gathered at the back of the plane. The air felt thick, heavy with the weight of Maya's words and the increasing sense of urgency. She could feel the man's pulse slowing, could see his body slipping into unconsciousness. She needed to act now, but Karen was standing between her and the man who was fighting for his life. And then, just as the tension reached a breaking point, a voice from the back of the plane called out, "What's going on here?" A man stood, his suit crisp and professional, but his eyes were filled with concern. He was a middle-aged businessman, but he wasn't just a passive observer anymore. "Is there a doctor on board?" Maya turned to him, a brief flash of relief crossing her face. "I'm a doctor," she said, stepping forward. "This man is in cardiac arrest. I need a defibrillator, please." But before the man could respond, Karen stepped forward again. "We've got it under control," she said. Her voice shook slightly now, as if she realized the weight of the situation had shifted. But she wasn't ready to concede. "Please, go back to your seat," Maya's patience snapped. "No, Karen, you don't have it under control." "I do. You're not a doctor, and this man is dying. You're obstructing me from doing what I need to do." Karen faltered, but before she could speak, the door at the front of the cabin opened. 2 FBI agents walked through, their uniforms standing out in stark contrast to the business attire of the passengers. Their faces were serious, their eyes scanning the cabin with authority. One of the agents, a tall man with a gruff voice, turned to Karen. "What's the situation here?" he asked, his gaze shifting to the man on the floor and then to Maya. Maya stood, her posture straightening with the weight of her decision. "This man needs medical assistance. I'm a surgeon, but I've been blocked from helping him." The agent looked at Karen, his expression hardening. "You've been blocking her from saving this man's life?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. Karen opened her mouth to speak but was cut off. The agent's attention shifted to Maya. Doctor, we've been briefed. We're here to help. Please take over. With a nod, Maya dropped to her knees beside the man. The FBI agents cleared the area, allowing Maya to work without further interference. The tension in the cabin was palpable, the quietest it had been all flight. Maya's hands were steady as she administered CPR. Each breath she took focused on the task at hand. The situation was at a boiling point. As Maya worked, she could feel the eyes of the passengers on her, their gazes a mix of admiration and uncertainty. They had been silent witnesses to a moment that felt larger than a medical emergency. It was a microcosm of the power dynamics at play in the world: racial bias, ignorance, and authority all clashing in a confined space. The man's pulse was weak, but Maya could feel a faint rhythm beginning to return as she continued CPR. The FBI agents stood ready, their eyes never leaving the scene. The minutes dragged on, each second feeling like an eternity. Then, just as Maya was about to give another round of compressions, the man's eyes fluttered open. It was subtle, but it was enough. His breathing began to stabilize. Maya felt the tension in her body ease, the weight of the moment lifting slightly. The agents stepped forward, their faces filled with relief. "He's stable for now. Thank you, Dr. Williams," one of them said. But as Maya stood up, the room still felt charged. She turned to Karen, who stood off to the side, her face pale and silent. The flight attendants, now in the back of the plane, looked on, some with expressions of shame, others with quiet acknowledgement. The tension wasn't over, but for now, the immediate threat had passed. Maya's focus had shifted back to the man's life, but a question lingered. Why had she been stopped in the first place? After the plane landed and paramedics took over the patient, Maya sat back in her seat, exhausted but relieved. Her hands shook slightly from the adrenaline, but she had saved a life. The man, although weak, was breathing on his own and his pulse was steady. He would make it through thanks to Maya's quick action. But the victory was bittersweet. Maya looked around the cabin, her thoughts still racing. The situation had exposed something far deeper than just a medical emergency. She had been blocked from helping a man in need because of her race. She had been treated like an outsider, someone unqualified simply because of her skin color. It was the same struggle she had faced countless times before in her career. And it was frustrating to know that, even in moments like this, racism could still shape how people saw her. The FBI agents had been supportive, but Maya couldn't shake the feeling that her fight wasn't just for one man's life, it was for her right to be seen, to be recognized, to be respected. It wasn't just about being a doctor. It was about breaking down the barriers that still existed for Black professionals in spaces where power was so often wielded against them. As she left the plane, she knew that this moment would be with her forever. It was a reminder that every step forward required pushing through the biases and prejudices that existed in the world. Maya had fought for this moment, and she had won. But the battle was far from over. Have you ever faced a situation where you were judged based on your race or gender instead of your abilities? How did you handle it? What would you have done if you were in Dr. Williams' shoes? Share your experiences and thoughts below. Like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that challenge the status quo and inspire change. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it and continue the conversation about standing up against injustice.